Another 7 unpopular opinions you're gonna hate me for. Number 7. Bruno Fernandes is still not that guy. Sorry folks, I know the popular thing to do now has become hyping him up, hence unpopular opinion, duh. But as a player, Bruno just doesn't do enough for me. And I don't mean that literally, cause don't get me wrong, Bruno's work rate is no doubt on point, but I still feel he leaves a lot to be desired as far as football IQ. You see, Bruno's passes mostly work with a team who play on the counter and have pacey wide players who themselves have a lot of space to run into. But for someone like Paul Pogba to say that if he was in the Man City team he'd be a Ballon d'Or contender? No. Bruno for me doesn't have the football intelligence to be a star in a team who dominate possession and play on the front foot, especially one with all the complex tactical intricacies where there is practically zero margin for error as far as decision making unless he wishes to be in the business end of the brilliant but bafflingly bad-tempered bold ex-Barca and Bayern bosses brazen bitch fit. Then Bruno, for me, just doesn't have what it takes to be a starer. And yes, starer, not starter. He's good enough to start for them, yes, but sooner or later he's gonna have to show a lot more of range to his passing outside freeing runners into empty land, and that is when I believe he'd get found out. Number 6. Antoine Griezmann deserved the golden ball at the 2022 World Cup. Antoine Griezmann was the player of the tournament in Qatar. Shut your hole. And yes, look, Mbappe won the golden boot, scored a hat-trick in the final, no doubt stole the show, but he also disappeared in the crucial last 8 tie against England, in addition to having some in-game rocky patches in other matches. Antoine Griezmann, on the other hand, was not only France's most consistent performer, but he kept up that consistency while basically playing 2 positions. Like, no joke, he was simultaneously one of their chief creators and put a hell of a defensive shift at the back too in pretty much every game. Simply put, he was both the heart and at the heart of his team in terms of both formation and intention. Man of the match against Australia, arguably the same against Denmark, inarguably the same against England, solid as a rock against Poland, same too for Morocco, and this is where revisionist history loves to rear its head again. Yes, the final against Argentina damn sure wasn't his best game, and yes, he did get upstaged by his younger teammate, but he still wasn't terrible. Where'd you lot get that from? And yes, that clearly matters a lot since, well, I'm guessing that's the main if not only argument against Griezmann winning the golden ball that tournament. But if you want the truth, this wasn't just the best individual tournament in that year's World Cup, but it was one of the best individual tournaments from a non-winner I've ever seen. Number 5. The enormous downside to the Messi and Ronaldo comparisons. So anyone who's watched my channel over the last couple of years would know that I love the Messi and Ronaldo rivalry. I'm a competitive guy by nature, and despite it being the thief of joy by most moist, modern and woke-minded melters' murmuring admissions, I love comparisons. And what better comparison can you have than comparing the best to the best? It's just the best. However, this doesn't mean there aren't faults in this, because you see, while pitting these 2 absolute icons of the game against each other has helped us put things into perspective on occasion, on other occasions it has actually led us to lose perspective of their true abilities. In other words, comparing Messi and Ronaldo's separate attributes has at times led us to underrate the lesser player in question, and at times even overrate the better player in question. Let me explain. Right, I'm gonna start with what is for me the most obvious example. So as I've said about 430 times, in my humble opinion, Messi is the greatest dribbler the game has ever seen. And once again, in my humble opinion, his dribbling shouldn't really be compared to anyone in his era, and very few from even past history. But of course, that's not how all this works. And you know what, Messi fans? Go ahead, compare Messi and Ronaldo's dribbling abilities to win points. Good on you. But please remember who you're talking about. Like, do you know who this is? I don't care if he's not as good as Messi. No one probably is. But facts remain that Cristiano Ronaldo is not only arguably the greatest dribbler the Premier League has ever seen, but in his pure football peak in the late 2000s, I'd put that version up there with the top 20 greatest dribblers of all time. After all, he himself admitted that out of everything he's able to do on the pitch, dribbling is what came the most naturally to him. But of course, as he went on to tirelessly work on other parts of the game to match up to and, in some cases, eventually surpass his dribbling, he inevitably became less known for his dribbling and more known for factors such as his work ethic. And I think even the Messi stans would agree, he has certainly earned that reputation. And to be fair, much like Messi's dribbling, Ronaldo's work ethic shouldn't really be compared to anyone. But of course, that's not how all this works. And this has basically led some to believe that because he isn't as pedantic and obsessed as his Portuguese counterpart, Messi apparently doesn't work hard. Listen brother, I don't care who you are, there's no chance in hell that you can get this good and stay this good for this long without not only putting in the work, but putting in a ton of work. I mean, where do you want to start? There are reports of him wanting to win every game in training, at times embarrassing his teammates when angry, reports of him adopting a vegan diet during the season, endlessly practicing his free kicks. Turning into a specialist in your late 20s doesn't just happen by accident, my friend, and, particularly in his younger days, putting in hours upon hours in the gym, as he wasn't exactly blessed with either size or strength. So again, does Messi have insane natural talent? Of course he does, but just remember that can only take you so far for so long. Not to a level where you're in your mid-30s and still taking entire digits of 20-year-old defenders' price tags at the world stage. Now, while the two examples I've presented so far were pretty evidential, the next one is rather speculative, and is the age-old debate regarding Messi's adaptability. Now look, considering the league he was in and the team he was playing in, I know Messi didn't do all that well in France. But that doesn't directly equate to him flopping in the Premier League. I wish life worked in such simple ways. Besides, this cold rainy night in Stoke shit has been going on way before Messi even joined PSG. And how did it start? Of course, from the CR7 comparison. Cause you know, Ronaldo actually did play in Stoke. And again, look, Ronaldo is obviously more adaptable than Messi. He has the physical attributes, a superior athletic dimension, a killer mindset, and whether he was at United, Juventus, or during that stupid Galacticos era at Madrid, he's significantly more used to having to adapt to new teammates, managers, and style of play. I get all that. As a matter of fact, I myself have said on more than one occasion that there is no chance that Messi can adapt as well as CR7, especially in the Premier League, especially back 20 years ago. But flop? Are you serious? I mean, it's not really fair to compare this guy to anyone, but let's look at players with a not too dissimilar style of play to Messi. Gianfranco Zola, Eden Hazard, Juninho, even Mo Salah to an extent, all have flourished here in England. And likewise, with time and practice, Messi would have done so too, and given how amazing he is, would have eventually entered the conversation of being one of the Premier League's greatest ever. Facts. Now so far my examples have been of the attributes of one GOAT being underrated due to the brilliance of the other. But for my next one, I actually wanted to give an example that goes both ways. That being passing. So Messi is a better passer than Ronaldo. That is clear for all to see. But boy do people go so over the top with this. And yes, in both ways, i.e. criminally underrating Ronaldo's passing and hilariously overrating Messi's passing. Now to be fair, these things aren't just a result of Messi and Ronaldo's passing being compared to each other. There are outside factors as well. For example, Ronaldo is widely believed to be a poor passer of the ball for someone at his level, and along with the comparisons to Messi, this wrongful reputation is also fueled by factors such as his hunger for goals in the second part of his career, his selfish antics like throwing his arms around at his teammates, and just a general tendency to be an absolute bell start from time to time. And yes, while he certainly isn't as good of a passer as Messi, and yes, is certainly a bell start from time to time, CR7 is still a very good passer of the ball. And I'm not saying that just because of his world-class crossing ability, or even because he's what, 4th in the all-time assist charts? Stats depend on many things, as I said. But even in general, in instances where he had to drop deep and spread the ball even in his later years, he was more than capable and very successful in doing so. So yeah, pay more attention to watching and less on tweeting. And speaking of tweeting, off we go on to Messi's passing again. So as I said, Messi's passing being overrated isn't just cause he's clearly a better passer of the ball than the player he's always compared to. Another key factor is that Leo's best pass is his final ball. A ball which, when it works, looks brilliant and therefore can be instilled in these video compilations and thus eventually aid in altering the casual's perspective of his overall passing. And also Gary Lineker. Just lots and lots of Gary Lineker. And these factors makes a lot of us lose sight of facts like Messi never drops deep, sits in and pulls strings. And yes, I know that isn't his job, but maybe stop comparing his passing to people whose job it is to do that. Not to mention also, his passing is extremely one-dimensional, something which was heavily exposed during his time at PSG. Watch this for more info. And last but not least, while these line-breaking passes look spectacular when played back-to-back, their actual success ratio is, well, disgustingly low. And yes, I know, even someone like KDB has a low success rate when it comes to that pass. But you see, unlike Messi, that isn't the only arrow in KDB's passing quiver. Because this guy can also play as an 8, as a 10, out wide, and even up front. And still use his passing and link-up play to dominate games, since his decision making and awareness of where each player is practically second to none. On the contrary, whenever Messi plays in a position out wide, for example, he either cuts in and shoots, relies on his dribbling to get him to a position where he can play that final ball, tries to play that final ball from stupid positions anyway when he realizes he can't dribble his way out of trouble, or, more so nowadays than ever before, he simply gets brushed off the ball. And that is why, my friends, this forced and fairly far-fetched footy fallacy frequently featuring in the forefront of forums of both fans and famous players is so flippin' figuratively foreign to yet frankly fascinating for a fellow follower of football like me. Cause facts are, Ronaldo is a very good passer of the ball, but just not as good as Messi. While Messi is one of the best passers of his generation among forward players, but when you factor in those playing deeper like midfielders or even players out wide, he simply doesn't make the cut. And as for those who think he's up there as one of the greatest passers of all time, yeah, get help. But not from me though. My knowledge on optometry is very low, you see. Just like yours in football, troll. Anyways, as far as on the pitch, those are the main examples I can think of. Let me know if there are any I'm missing. But for my final example though, I wish to move to something a little different, but just as, if not more prominent. So, because Ronaldo is transparently whiny, petty and, yes, a bell start from time to time, there are actually people who think Messi doesn't care about individual awards and all this rivalry. Look, with this one, you don't even have to listen to me. Like, just go and look at how uptight he was when the 2015 Ballon d'Or was being announced, and the subsequent sheer relief on his face after he'd been given the award following 2 years of CR7 winning it back to back. Not to mention, he also never voted for Ronaldo while the two were playing together in Spain. And then go and hear some of Leo's old teammates speak like Xavi, Henry, or even Kevin Prince Boateng. And you'll see for yourself, if you didn't already know and weren't merely pretending not to, that Messi not only has a massive ego, but also was very aware and did used to keep up to date with how Cristiano was getting on. The only difference between them is that Cristiano is simply more open about all this because, well, that's just his personality. He doesn't hide when laughing, he doesn't hide when crying, he's always worn his heart on his sleeve. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not implying that Messi is fake. I think that's the wrong word to use. I just feel that he knows that if he was more expressive of his true emotions, it would just create a media shitstorm. I just don't think he'd be bothered to deal with all of that. He seems more like someone who just prefers to play football, pack up, and go home to his wife, which is fine. Or allegedly to a lady that's not his wife, which is not so fine. Either way, stop being fooled by agenda-fueled idiots in the media. That's not fine either. And the ultimate takeaway as far as the bigger picture should go something like this. Compare these guys all you want. I myself do so all the time. But try and not let that make you completely lose sight. Cause yes, due to them being so different yet so similar, they will inevitably prevail in different parts of the game. But that doesn't make any of them lacking in that specific department they are inferior to the other in. Cause at the end of the day, no matter what the attribute is in question, it is very likely that one of them is simply suffering the misfortune of being compared to one of, if not the absolute, best in the business. Number 4. Arsene Wenger was miles better than Jurgen Klopp. When Jurgen Klopp arrived in England in 2015, in a few instances during that time due to his perceived arrogance and stubbornness, the Liverpool manager was labelled as a young Arsene Wenger. And while that at the time was a tad unfair, now that his time in England has come to an end, it's pretty ironic that Wenger is probably the manager whom Klopp's legacy is the most comparable to in English football, with the jolly and jovial but often jagged and jarringly jibber-jabbering now jobless German giant justifiably in some people's eyes having surpassed Le Professeur's work in England. In some people's eyes. Not mine. And if I'm honest, not mine by a long shot. And here's why. Okay, please remember, I am only taking the too tall, tactically tantalizing and trendy trusting top tier coach's time in England into account. So, sorry, but there will be no consideration for Klopp's amazing work with Borussia Dortmund or Wenger's historically significant stint in Nagoya Grampus 8. Sorry, I'm a little scared to say that out too loud in case my camera starts floating. So instead, this is solely Klopp at Liverpool and Wenger at Arsenal. And yeah, I don't even think it's that close. So yeah, as usual, let's start with the numbers. Jurgen Klopp won 8 trophies in 9 years for Liverpool, while Arsene Wenger won 17 in 22 for Arsenal, with Klopp's single greatest achievement being the Champions League trophy and Wenger's being a Golden League title. Now, if you ask me which one I'd rather my club win, without a doubt it would be the Champions League. Anytime, any year, any day. But this is the thing about judging on the surface, because if you look a little below that, Liverpool during that run had a winning rate of just over 61% with a famously narrow escape in the semis. In contrast, in the run up to Wenger's single greatest achievement, his side went unbeaten in the Premier League during a time where the mid-table competition was statistically stronger than it ever had been. Watch this video for more info on that. So while I still stand by the fact that I'd much rather have a Champions League than an unbeaten title, there's no question over which one of these particular runs was stronger. And no, obviously I'm not judging their time in England solely on that. That would be dumb. So let's take a look at some of the other great hits. So Klopp took over a team with a comparatively limited amount of resources and turned them into serial title contenders. But to be honest, you can kinda say the same thing about Arsene Wenger. Klopp also successfully implemented a footballing philosophy into a team that historically didn't exactly play that way. But again, you can say the same thing about Arsene Wenger. Klopp went head to head and toe to toe with arguably the greatest Premier League side of all time. You can say the same thing about Arsene Wenger. Klopp more often promoted younger unproven players and unlocked their true potential instead of just splurring cash and bringing in finished articles. One more time, you can say the same thing about Arsene Wenger. And this is the difference, my friends. Because you see, unlike Klopp, Wenger came into a country that was steeped in a certain tradition and basically revolutionized their diet, training methods and approach to professionalism. Unlike Klopp, Wenger holds the record for being the most successful manager in the oldest footballing competition in the world. Unlike Klopp, Wenger came in and right away had to compete with a team and manager who were already stable and dominant at the very top, and as a matter of fact, he went on to dethrone them multiple times. And unlike Klopp, Wenger came into a side as relatively unknown and left as the greatest manager in the club's history. And while that last point may not necessarily prove him to be the better manager when all is considered, when it comes to leaving a legacy behind in the club they managed as well as English football, for me there is no doubt Arsene Wenger clears Jurgen Klopp, and clears Jurgen Klopp by quite some distance. Number 3. Cristiano Ronaldo deserved the 2007 Ballon d'Or. I'm still amazed how unpopular this is. So look man, we all love Kaka. How can you not? He was an amazing footballer, by all accounts an even better person, and for people of a certain age, does bring a hint of nostalgia that of course works in his favour. But also, there are a few things concerning 2006-2007, particularly concerning these two individuals, that have been heavily overlooked over the years. As I've said many times before, there is no question that the Champions League is the premier competition in football. It's the highest level in any form of football, and while it no doubt should have more of a weight when determining the level of a player than any other competition, by no means should it completely overhaul every other competition, especially not the longest competition. And as incredible as he was in Europe, Kaká's domestic form that year, or lack thereof for that matter, is in fact one of the things people very seldom mention. He finished 4th with Milan in the league, managed to get only 8 goals in 31 games, which, even for a forward in Serie A in the mid-2000s, isn't the best return, and even went 3 months from September to December without having neither scored or assisted in any games Milan won, during a run where they only even won 3 in 14. And even after Kaká broke his 3-month duck in back-to-back games in December, he'd then begin another dry spell where he wouldn't register another goal contribution for almost a further 2 months, eventually breaking the duck with this nice run and pullback for his old mate and Milan's new January signing Ronaldo late on against struggling Siena in the 17th of February. But of course, as much as it is 2007, given that we are talking about the domestic circuit and not Europe, a certain someone was not to be outshone. Cause speaking of mazy runs against low table sides and subsequent goals by players called Ronaldo, just 8 days after Kaká reintroduced his name in the Serie A score sheets via an assist, CR7 went above and beyond and did so on his own. Cause you see, he too went on a mazy run that put his side ahead, but instead of his run ending with a goal that had been replied to later on, this was the winner of the game. Instead of getting the assist for the goal, he finished his own run off by scoring himself. And instead of this goal and subsequent victory keeping his side in the top 4 race, Ronaldo's famous winner against Fulham at Craven Cottage took his side ahead in the title race. And while that wasn't the goal that definitively clinched the title for United, when it came to doing just that, it was CR7 himself who delivered once again, with his penalty against the noisy neighbours in May bringing the Premier League back to Old Trafford for the first time in 4 years. And my friend, if you took this and did a side-by-side comparison to Kaká's league form that year, unlike the Champions League where both individuals were pretty much neck and neck until the last 4, this really isn't close at all. Don't believe me? Well, let's just do just that. So in their respective leagues that year, Kaká finished 4th with Milan, 36 points off the top. Ronaldo finished 1st with United, 6 points clear from 2nd. Kaká totaled 8 goals and 7 assists in 31 games for Milan. Ronaldo totaled 17 goals and 14 assists in 34 games for United. Kaká went on 2 extended dry spells, including one where he failed to score in 11 games for Milan. Ronaldo on his own led the charts for most goals, assists, shots and crosses for United, going on a mini run where he scored 3 consecutive braces starting in Christmas, which itself was the start of an extended run where he tallied 19 goal contributions in 12 games. But mind you, he wasn't just stat padding for the sake of it, using his goals and assists to turn the tie in United's favour in tense affairs on many occasions, including against the likes of Man City and Fulham as already stated, but also Reading twice as well as Tottenham and Liverpool. In simple terms, Manchester United winning the league without Ronnie that year would have been impossible. And then factor in the pair's respective forms in the domestic cup competitions, Kaká playing only 2 games and blanking in both, while Ronaldo was once again his side's best player, taking his team to the FA Cup final and even scoring in 3 games in a row at one point. It really does put things into perspective and, well, should make you realize that if it wasn't for the Brazilian's amazing UCL run that season, comparing him to Ronaldo would have been nothing short of desperate and embarrassing, which isn't usually like Ronaldo haters, but I guess there's a first time for everything. But that's the thing, you see, even if we ignore the coulda, woulda, shouldas and even factor in Kaká's UCL run, given that Ronaldo had a pretty good run himself in Europe with 8 goal contributions in 11 games, including those 2 magical displays against Benfica and Roma, I really do find it hard to see how anyone could believe in their heart of hearts that Ricardo Kaká deserved a 2007 Ballon d'Or. Now, had Kaká actually been a part of Brazil's Copa America triumph that summer, there's no doubt that this video would have been a little harder to make for myself. But fact is, he didn't. Fact is, he had 18 goals and 11 assists in 48 games that year. Ronaldo had 23 goals and 20 assists in 53 games that year. He had an amazing run and dragged his aging teammates to UCL glory that year. Ronaldo was the main man for arguably the best team in Europe that year. He had a mediocre at best league campaign and practically non-existent Coppa Italia campaign that year. Ronaldo had a world-class title-winning league campaign and a stellar run to the FA Cup final that year. And ultimately, he won the Champions League but finished 4th in the league, had zero influence elsewhere and missed Copa America that year. Ronaldo reached the semi-final of the Champions League, final of the FA Cup, won the Premier League and became captain of his country at 22 years of age that year. Ergo, where Ricardo Kaká was world class and at times out of this world that year, Cristiano Ronaldo was for most parts just that much better that year. Number 2, Manchester United could have been champions in 2022. Yep, the season they finished 6th. I'm dead serious. Manchester United under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had everything elsewhere. A world-class goalkeeper, a world-class centre-back, offensively talented fullbacks, defensively talented fullbacks, a world-class midfielder, a world-class winger, a world-class centre-forward, and still at the time, arguably the best player in the world, regardless of position. Not to mention dangerous youngsters on the bench even beyond that. Some dangerous in more ways than one. They just needed someone to glue it all together. A true controller of the game. And I've said it before, even in this video, I'll say it again and I'll always stick by this. Had this United team fielded a player like a younger Matic, or dare I even say Casemiro, they'd have been title contenders at the bare minimum. Casemiro coming in would have freed up Pogba, something they've been trying to do for years, and bro, this attack would have been a problem for any team in Europe. Sadly for United fans though, as you guys know, things didn't quite unfold that way. And in reality, by the time Casemiro arrived, Ole was long gone, Cavani and Pogba had just gone, with CR7 and Sancho soon following suit. Number 1, Messi's World Cup win did not make him the GOAT. Did it help his case? Of course it did, but not directly. What do I mean by that? Well, let me dumb this down for you. So what are the potential reasons people may think that winning the World Cup makes Messi the greatest of all time? Let's go through them one by one. And in the off chance I miss any out, do let me know in the comments below and I'll straight away get to not giving a f about what you think. Please subscribe. So the first and probably most common reason cited on this is that Messi winning the World Cup makes him the GOAT because he has now completed the set. And that is true. He certainly has. But once again, completing the set in football means you've had the better career, not you were the better player. For example, you lot heard about the survey carried out by The Athletic where 66% of former footballers thought Ronaldo had a better career than Messi. That's the debate winning the World Cup impacts. So basically, if they conducted the poll again, the results may now be 50-50, or even in Messi's favour. Either way, being the GOAT and having a GOAT career are different things. If they weren't, Iniesta and Zidane would have been considered the GOATs. But all you sexy beast, I hear you shout. Messi has completed the set while also having an individual career and possessing individual qualities which neither Zizou nor Iniesta can light a candle to. And you're right, it's true. These guys can't light a candle to Messi's individual career. But guess who can? Yup, if you think the World Cup is basically the icing on the cake of a remarkable club and individual career and therefore cements Messi as the GOAT, you're wrong again. Because if that's the case, Pele is the GOAT. Cause you see, Pele and Messi have had a very similar career path. Both spent the majority of their careers at the club they came through, becoming the all-time top scorer of that club, winning everything with that club, and then moving to a piss-poor league near the end. And no, shut up about Messi playing in the top team. Football back then was different. The European Cup was still at its infancy, and players from countries such as Argentina and Brazil usually stayed in that region of the world. So not only is that argument out of the window, But on top of that, one, on an individual level, Pele could do everything Messi does and more, considering he was actually elite in the air despite only being an inch taller. And two, unlike Messi, Pele didn't waltz into a team who were on the course to win back-to-back league titles and the Continental Cup. He was the product of a pretty average club, which he then went on to transform into a global powerhouse. So, seriously, there is no competition on those levels. But you know what? Since this is about the World Cup not securing your GOAT status, let's say Pele and Messi are somehow equal on the individual and club front. So I guess that would hypothetically mean the decider goes down to World Cup performances. Okay. Not only does Pele have 3 times as many World Cups, his contributions in 2 of them comfortably outperform Messi in 2022. So, no. Messi's remarkable club career and individual ability combining with a World Cup trophy making him the GOAT doesn't work either. So genuinely, what argument can you make? Not about Messi being the GOAT, because boy are there plenty of arguments for that, but him winning the World Cup making him or even cementing him as the GOAT. Because my friends, no matter what angle you look at it from and how you wish to shape the argument, it will always lead you to award that title to someone other than Messi. Not to mention, by the way, let's forget Messi for a second and address the wider issue here. So, if you're one of those morons who actually believe that you must win the World Cup to be in the GOAT conversation, then you're one of those morons who ultimately believe these guys aren't in that conversation. Are you serious? So according to you, Johan Cruyff isn't in the conversation as he didn't win a World Cup with a country who only even qualified for 2 out of 9 tournaments before his services? Cristiano Ronaldo is not in the conversation as he didn't win a World Cup with a country who only even qualified for 3 out of 17 tournaments before his services? George Best isn't in the conversation as he didn't win the World Cup with a country who only even qualified 3 times in the entire history. Alfredo Di Stefano isn't in the conversation because he did... Wait. What? It's pretty simple, people. The bottom line from all this should be crystal clear. If you are someone who does think like that, it can only mean either one of the 2 things. 1, you rate Best, Cruyff and Ronaldo above Messi and co since you're actually expecting their goated abilities to take such underdog nations to World Cup glory. Or 2, you're just stupid. So which is it? Are you stupid? Or are you stupid? And that is that, people, and as always, you keep rolling.